And today I have the great honor to have the 12th Sergeant Major of the Army, Jack Tilley, on Connect First. Thank you very much, SMA, for being able to come on to Connect First. It was an honor to be on your podcast, and it's an honor for you to be able to come on my podcast and for us to talk a little bit about leadership, and leadership is a relationship. But please, some opening remarks from yourself and introduce yourself.
I don't know if I got much to introduce myself about. Well, real quick here is if I talked about me, it'd take us about an hour and a half because I'm an old guy. I spent about 36 years in the service. I always tell people 16 trips in and out of Afghanistan, 3 in Iraq. Was fighting in the streets of Saigon when I was 18 years old. In the Pentagon for 9/11. Overran once, 20 wounded, 7 killed. So I always tell people that I still suffer from post-traumatic stress before they even invented that acronym or that name for it. I'm a small business owner. I've owned as many as 3 companies, and now I currently have 1 company that I have ownership in. I've been married 53 years. I love my wife. Have 2 boys, 2 granddaughters, and 3.5 great grandbabies. So I got 3 and 1 on the way. So I got 4 grandbabies, and I just every day I love life, and I love helping soldiers and doing all I can for soldiers and their families.
And I can tell that, and again, I appreciate your enthusiasm, obviously your passion for giving back to the soldiers. And today on the podcast, talk about leadership is a relationship, and we have this people first, right? And I was reading some posts this week, and it was kind of interesting that people were saying, people say it's people first, but they're not. Their actions does not back that up. And I'll tell you one thing that I know from you, from reading your book. So he has a great book, Soldier for Life. I would ask everyone to get it and read it. A great book if you're talking about understanding relationships. If you understand about leadership, a great book right here. Here in First Corps, we are all about people first, and it actually is in our actions of what we do. I mean, just the other day, we were having some challenges with some of our barracks. And guess what I did? I got the necessary people together, and we went down and come up with a plan to fix those barracks. That's people first. Taking action when you have a problem and fixing it. Not knowing you have a problem and continue to have that fester.
Yeah, I think sometimes people have a tendency to walk by problems and don't say anything. And I always tell people, if I see issue, I correct the issue, correct the problem, because if you don't correct it, it's a new standard. But first has been the way I grew up in the Army. I think any successes that I've had in life is because the people around me. You can't be a professional soldier and not get people involved with what you're doing, because you're not successful by yourself. You just can't accomplish anything by yourself. And so I've always been motivated by being around people, because I draw from their energy and their enthusiasm. Just picks me up even that much more.
No, and you're exactly right. It's a team effort, right? So yeah. Command team, just like with me and General Brunson, but there's a team aspect in that. And understanding your team, as you talk about people, right? Understand them personally and also understand them professionally. Now, again, you hear me say, I'm not saying you're going to the club with your private. That's not what I'm saying. But you've got to get to know them, who they are, and develop that relationship, who their mom and dad are, who their brothers and sisters are, what's their hobbies. Hey, what's their goals, and how am I as a leader going to help them attain their goals? Getting to know them, because guess what? That's where you build the commitment, you build the trust among your formation when you get to know them. And getting to know them so you can connect with them. Because people are different. Like me and you, extroverted, right? What if you have somebody who's introverted? How do you connect with them? You've got to get to know them and how to connect with them so you're not interrupting that space. Because, the introverted people might not like you getting in their space. So you have to understand on how to, connect with them. That's how you get to know them personally. And then professionally, what do I need to help them within the formation to get them to master the fundamentals, master their craft, or if they're a leader, how am I developing them as a leader?
Well, the one thing about, you said a lot of really good things right there, but the one thing about that, how do I get the best out of that individual? How do I help them be successful in life? And again, you said this probably a lot better than I could, is that each individual is motivated by something different, right? And as a leader, you've got to learn how to read people. You know, some people you can walk up and pat them on the back. Some people you can kick them in the ass a little bit. You probably shouldn't say that, but you can kick them in the butt. But you got to figure out what to do to motivate those people. All the good leaders that I've had throughout the military career, I've worked around a lot of officers and non-commissioned officers, and the good leaders are very approachable, and they want to talk to you, they want to engage, they want to listen to your issues, because I think sometimes you have people that are more concerned about promotions versus taking care of the people you work on. I still talk about this. When I'm talking to soldiers or families or whoever it is, or whether or not you're platoon sergeant, first sergeant, battalion sergeant, major, whatever, I tell people to stay in your lane of responsibility. If you're a platoon sergeant, that's your responsibility. And you need to make sure you stay in your lane. And as you get more senior, maybe you get the first corps, or you have a larger scope of responsibility. But there's a lot of things going on in your left and right, but stay in your lane of responsibility and help the people in your area be successful. And again, I don't want to blab too much because this is a great subject to talk about. Listening and communicating. Be a good listener, be a good communicator, and allow people to talk to you. And the other thing is, people, I know a lot of times when I used to talk to people in the Army, when you'd say something bad, people get turned off. And I tell people, if you've got something bad to say it. Because I want to hear it. I want to hear that information, because if I don't know what the issues are, I can't help anybody fix it.
Oh man, and you said a lot of great things there at the same time.
I can't remember what I said.
So you said about the communication piece and active listening. I even take it a little bit further. It's just not listening. You've got to hear what they are saying, right? Because you know the deal. We are good at listening, but then we're also thinking about what we're going to say next. Instead of hearing what they're saying to connect with them, then you speak from some of the pieces that you picked from that sentence or that little conversation that they spoke to you. Then you reply back. Don't automatically, they think something in their head and they're already thinking, okay, this is what I'm going to say whenever we're done with this conversation. So then you're hearing them, you're connecting with them, and you're understanding them, right? Instead of active listening, and all of a sudden I'm thinking about what I'm going to say next, because that's how you start engaging. And I agree with you, because you said about, hey, that open door, right? And people say, hey, I have an open door. I do have an open door, and I'm out and about with the soldiers, but hey, come talk to me, say hello to me. I'm a person just like you're a person. And I like someone saying hello to me, just like me saying hello to somebody else. It's, getting that connection with somebody just by saying hello.
Yeah. I've talked to people before where as soon as I stop, they start engaging, start yakking their mouth again. And just what you just said, they were so worried about what they're going to say, they wasn't listening to what I was saying. And not being a name dropper, but maybe I met presidents and senior people all through my life. And the ones that are good communicators will stop and stare at you and just sort of stare right into your heart and won't say anything until you stop. And they'll stop, they'll sort of pause, and then they'll sort of repeat it back to you. Like, I think you said, this is whatever the heck it was, but they repeat it back. So there's a clear understanding of what the issues are. I used to do that all the time. I said, well, I heard what you said. Now you're saying this, whatever the heck it was, and repeat it back to them. So I'm clear about what they're saying. And I think that's the best way to communicate. Of course, there's so many different ways now to communicate. When I was in the Army, I mean, I think we just got a damn computer and stuff, but cell phones, all this newer stuff. But there's a lot of different ways to communicate now. And I know we're going to talk about social media and stuff like that, but that opens a big window now for all of us.
Oh yeah, agree 100% with you. And social media, I think, is very important to be able to use, right? And you've got to understand when to use it And when I need to pick up the phone, or when I need to do a face-to-face, as you talked about, face-to-face, you're seeing that body language, right? And, you said an interesting piece, and I said about, the heart, and you talked about the heart. If you want to be authentic, don't speak from here, speak from the heart. That's being authentic, and that's being you when you're speaking from the heart, right? But I'm all about using social media. I think it's very important because that's where our soldiers are at. Now, again, you have to manage that balance. Hey, there's a time to use social media, but then there's a time to pick up the phone, and there's a time to do face-to-face. So you have to figure that balance out, but we've got to get on social media because that's where our soldiers are at, to be able to, communicate with them on their platforms.
Yeah, it's really funny. When I started Sergeant the Army, I got an email one time. A guy told me, he says, "You were the sorriest selection as a Sergeant Major of the Army that anybody could have made." Oh, he just hammered me up. And then this guy was so, I'm not going to tell you what, well, I won't tell you what, he was an officer. He was a colonel in the Army, not in the Army, in the Air Force. And, I was just angry as heck, I said, well, and he wasn't very smart because he put his phone number on and his email. So I didn't really even wanted me to engage. So the guy I was working with at the time, Sergeant Major Myers, which still works with me now in my company, said, "Sergeant Major, calm down. Don't call him right now." Oh, man, I was mad. I was really bothered by it. So I waited a couple weeks till I calmed down a little bit and sort of got my thoughts together. And I actually called him on the phone. When I called him on the phone, I says, "Hey, sir, how you doing? This is Sergeant Major of the Army, Jack Tilley." "Oh, Sergeant Major, so nice for you to call me," and all that stuff. And then I said, "Well, I just called you to say you should be calling the Chief of Staff of the Army or emailing him. Obviously you got out of the Army as a retiree. Obviously you got out of the Army because you weren't smart enough to get promoted anymore," or something like that. Anyway, I tried to get my shots in there, but people are brave on email or on social media where they wouldn't say some of those things to your face. And so I think if I'm not going to put anything on social media, I wouldn't tell you to your face. And the other thing is that if you attack people on social media, you're going to be attacked. Right. And if you attack people on social media, it's just going to turn people off, so I don't want to turn anybody off. One more thing, I'll be quiet here. One of the interesting things in leadership positions, the wisest, a good guy, Sergeant Major John Stevens, he was my Sergeant Major when I was at Fort Knox. And he called me up when I got selected as Sergeant Major in the Army. He says, "Can I give you some advice?" Well, obviously I'm going to say yes, because he's one of my mentors. And I said, "Sure, Sergeant Major." He says, "The reason they hired you, just like you in First Corps, the reason they hired you is because of the things you did prior to getting to First Corps and the leadership that you had and all the other, the units that you was assigned to." And I said, "Well, yeah, that makes sense." He says, "So don't change who you are." Because a lot of times as leaders, when we get promoted, we want to say, "Well, look at me. I got one more story I want to tell you real quick." But as you get leader, you think that, "Hey, look at me. I was promoted and now I'm at this level." But you're no different than you was before. So don't change. I said, "I got it, Sergeant Major." He said, "The second thing is 50% of the people like you and 50% of the people don't like you." He said, "So when you make a decision what's best for the United States Army, not what's good for Jack Tilley. It's what's good for the Army." And so I always went by that. Real quick, I'm going to tell you one more story. So when I was selected as Sergeant Major of the Army, I was at a conference. I won't tell you where, but I was at a conference. And I was a CENTCOM Sergeant Major, but I was all the way at the end of the desk, end of the table there. And I'd bring up things and I'd say stuff and people wouldn't even, I don't think they ignored me, but they didn't really respond to me. Okay. So I'd bring up these things and all this stuff, and I sit there for the day. I said, "Oh, heck, why did I come to this conference?" Well, that evening, they announced me as next Sergeant Major of the Army. So the next day I went to the conference. I'm at the middle of the table. I got the best seat in the house. Everything I said was the smartest thing in the world. I hadn't changed a bit. I had the same thoughts and ideas. So I always thought that was sort of funny. So don't change who you are, be who you are, and do what's right for the United States Army.
Hey, and you're exactly right. Two pieces that you said. Number one thing, be who you are, and then humble. Yep. And first I'll talk about be who you are. Because people have told me that, hey, be who you are. And I didn't quite understand that, what that meant. Be who you are. And it goes back to, as I was talking about before, is, it's, you're not here. From your heart is who you are, right? And that is true you. And I told the sergeant majors this all the time, and all the leaders when I talk to them, hey, who you are comes from the heart. That's where, who you are comes from. And don't change yourself, But, it goes back to your piece on, advice and being humble, right? So, all the time, I always ask people all the time for advice. When I'm sitting in, meetings, I'll be like, hey, give me, what a great way to start something. Hey, can you give me some advice? Can you help me? Wow. That's the sergeant majors ask me for advice, or sergeant majors ask me for help. That's powerful. And it goes back to, develop a relationship and connecting with somebody. You say them two words, you're automatically getting a connection. And, because usually when sergeant major on, defenses are up, right? There's sergeant major on. But when you say, hey, can you help me, or can you give me some advice? Defenses go down, and they're like, oh, sergeant major wants my advice. Sergeant major wants my help, which is awesome, right? Because then that's how you can continue on that conversation. You get their advice, and then you continue the conversation from what they say.
Well, I got to tell you a funny story. Now, all the time throughout my military career, you always have people coming up with great ideas and great, because you can have just millions and millions of great ideas. So I don't know where I started. Maybe I was a battalion or brigade, but people come up with advice. I said, that's a great idea. You can do it. I want you to put the program together. So as I moved up through the chain there a little bit, every time somebody come up with a great idea, that's a great idea. How about you doing it? So they better have a good idea before they bring it to me, because I'd make them put it together. So that was really helped me out a lot anyway. So, hey, one more thing too is I'm going to make sure we talk about leadership and development, talk about families, the importance of family, the importance of your children. I always tell people that I went through the Army and spent a long time. And one of the things I think I really screwed up on a little bit was I was focused 100% on the Army all the time. And I never watched my children grow up. And if I could turn my life back around, I'd spend a lot more time with my kids. Now, of course, I spoil my grandkids. I buy them whatever they want and all that stuff. But it's a little bit different, but it's still fun. But make sure you spend the time with your family and schedule some times throughout the month or a weekend. I'm sure you guys are doing a lot better than I did when I was in the military.
Hey, no. We took what you've put in place, SMA, and we just continue to make it better. That's the key, right? Is, the person before you take what because obviously the Army's successful. and so how we continue to make it better and push into the future, because we've all adapted through time, changes of time, and we've all adapted and become flexible, right? Is very important. So, and I agree 100% with you on the family. And I talk to, the leaders is work-life balance. And I talk to soldiers too. And, it's work and life balance, right? So, we've got to put in the work. So everyone's got to understand, you've got to put in the work to be successful. You've got to do that, right? There's time you have to figure out to work. And then there's time with your life, with your family, and your hobbies and your goals, right? But here's what we, a challenge and we're working on, is that time management, right? There is 1,440 minutes in a day. So if you take every single minute of the day, what you do, and plan that out every single day. I have a planner that I do it every single night before for the next day to get me ready. Hey, this is exactly what I'm doing during that day. And so everyone sees that, just like emails. Emails will suck the life out of you. So I have a plan for it. I check on in the morning real quick. If there's nothing hot, I'm out and among BFC and out with the soldiers, out with the leaders. Yeah. And then guess what? I don't check the emails until in the evening times. And everyone knows that. They know I'm out and about. If you need me, call me. And I will come see you. Or, we can have the discussion on the phone. Like when I have office calls, SMA, I go to their location. I don't have them come to my location. I like going to their location, right? Because again, I'm in their comfort zone and I want them to be comfortable, right? Again, we talk about the defenses. I want to get that defense down so I'm in their zone, in their safe place, and have a better conversation with them.
Yeah, you just talked about office calls, and I remember all the officers, all the senior insults when they came to whatever unit I was in, I always wanted to talk to them and meet them and talk to them, just sit down and see what they're doing. And I went to, when the commanders came in, like battalion commanders and stuff, you're right, I'd go to their offices and stuff. But some of the rest of them, I want them to come in because I put stuff on the wall, and I want them to understand me and know that I was approachable there a little bit. I got you got me so pumped up. I'm going to tell you a little story if you don't mind.
Please do. You can tell as many stories you want.
Well, you may like this one, because I was, as a sergeant major in the Army, I used to say that everybody knows who I am, which is not true. So I remember I was in, have you ever just I was in Kansas City. I was walking through the airport. I was in civilian clothes. I seen these 8 soldiers. They seen me. I seen them. I think to myself, I'm all by myself. The trip coordinator was with me in public affairs, but they were sitting down and doing something. So I'm walking down, and I think, yo, these guys bound to know who I am. So I walked up to him. I says, "Hey, how you doing?" He says, "Hey, how you doing?" I said, "Pretty good." Obviously, he hadn't seen my picture. He didn't know what the heck I was. I said, "Do you have that book that shows the Army rank structure?" And this is a true story now. The guy said, "Yep, I sure do." I said, "Well, could I see it?" He said, "Yep, you sure can." So we opened the book up, and I pointed at the rank of as a specful. I says, "That's the rank of a specialist, isn't it?" He said, "Yep, it sure is." I said, "Well, I said, okay." So I said, "That's the rank of the Sergeant Major of the Army, isn't it?" He said, "Yep, it sure is." I said, "That's me." He said, "No shit." He looked at me right in the eye. He says, "Prove it." What? He said, "Prove it." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You got an ID card?" And I said, "Yep, I sure do." So I pulled the ID card out. He looked at me. You had to be there. It's hard to tell this over the net here, right? He looked at me, looked at the ID card, looked at me, looked at the ID card, and finally says, "No shit, glad to meet you," and shook my hand. That was in the story. But I tell you that story because everybody thinks everybody knows who you are. They don't know who you are. And unless you get out, what you just talked about, unless you get out and let them see you and talk to them and get around them and see what you're doing. And the other thing I was going to say here a minute ago is what you talked about a minute ago is about your emails. That's exactly what I did. I'd go in, do my emails, do everything I had to do, and then I'd leave and I'd come back at the end of the day. The other thing I did I thought was really helpful, I always made sure I talked to my commander in the morning. And when I left at night, I'd talk to the commander. And then I set up a schedule where the first sergeants, one liked PT, one played racquetball, just different stuff. So I found out where as a battalion guy, and I did it a brigade too with the battalion guys, but I found out where their sweet spot was, and how do I get into that sweet spot and talk to them about what's going on. And so it's all about building that relationships and building what you said a long time ago about team building and focusing on the people around you. And the one thing about all of this stuff is, and I said it the other day when we was on the show, there's just no second best in our profession. We have to make sure that we're the best at everything that we do. And I don't know. I wish I could go back and stay in the Army 50 years, but they'd throw my butt out. But I loved it. Anyway, I'm all pumped up right now. So.
Hey, and you always welcome back, SMA. We'll take you back in a heartbeat. Because you pumped me up, too.
They're probably chaptering me out now.
Because you're passionate about what you do. And you're authentic, and you can tell that, right? And again, as you said about being open, right? I mean, you can tell you're open. So I want to come and see you. I want to come talk to you because you're authentic, right? Just same thing when you're down, I go down the motor pools, right? I don't walk around, my chest all out and everything like that. I just go walk around and walk up to the soldiers, say how you doing and everything like that, and just start talking to them. And if I'm able to, I have this little ranger chair I take with me. I sit it down, and I just sit down with them. So I'm not standing up in an authoritative manner, right? I'm sitting down with them, and we just have a discussion. Or, hey, tell me what you're doing. I don't understand. Can you give me some advice? I don't understand. And they'll walk me through what they're doing. It's amazing, right? And it's great, especially when you have that sergeant and that staff sergeant down there, and they're walking around checking on their soldiers, inspecting what they expect, right? As we talk about standards and discipline, right? Making sure that they're doing the right things and they're training them on master the fundamentals and master your craft. Because E1 through E4, master your fundamentals, master your craft. Because when you become a non-commissioned officer, then you're the trainer of that master of fundamentals and master your craft. Because now we got to start developing you to become a leader. And what does that mean? I mean, it took me about 10 years in the military to understand leadership. And I tell soldiers all the time, because the first thing they'll do is they'll say some explicit words about my leadership. And I tell them, I was like, hey, just so you know, your sergeant, your staff sergeant, is learning how to be a leader, right? You don't all of a sudden go to BLC and you're this great leader. It doesn't happen. It takes time. It takes development. And I tell my story. It took me about 10 years to understand leadership and that caring for soldiers. Because I was a horrible E5, E6. I mean, I yelled all the time, right? And you say it in your book about one of your drill sergeants, that he didn't have to yell, right? Yeah. He didn't have to yell. But it took me years, up to about 10 years in the military, to understand that and how to be able to talk to soldiers and develop them just talking to them instead of yelling at them.
When I got to be a really good E6? When I made E7. When I got to be a really good E7 is when I made E8. Because you can look back and say, hey, I wish I'd have did that a little bit better as it come through there. So it's always funny. It's always funny to think about how it all boils down to one thing: leading by example, setting a standard, enforcing standards, don't cut corners, because you can't cut corners in war. The other thing is you got to be a hands-on kind of person. I remember when I was a platoon sergeant, that I had some other platoon sergeants around me. They'd go down there and they'd drink coffee and watch the soldiers work. And when I went down there, and I tell the guys, hey guys, we got to pull maintenance today on the tanks, and this is your tank, you got your tank, so here's what we're going to do today. I'll see you guys later. I said, Sergeant Tilley, what you going to do? I said, I'm going to work on my tank, right? I'm going to go change the road wheels, do what I got to do, change track and stuff, whatever. But I didn't watch them. Now, I may work on my vehicle, walk around, see how they're doing or something, but I worked on my vehicle. Because you have, a Sergeant 5 or a staff sergeant, those are professional soldiers that know what right looks like. You may have to coach and teach and, sort of help them out a little bit, but they got to see you working right along with them. I all my military career, it was when I remember when I deployed to Bosnia, they gave me a 9mm, I think it was, or 45, I can't remember, so long ago. They said, Sergeant Major, you're going to have a pistol. I said, no, we're going in a hot area. Yeah, I want an M16. I said, the guy, what do you want? I don't care, give me an M16. So I had an M16, all my ammunition. And they said, why? I said, hey, look, I'm not going to pump a few rounds at somebody. I'm going to do my damage here. So I had a 9mm, I had a 40, whatever the heck it was, and an M16. So anyway, leading by example is so important, and just being yourself. You said it a bunch of times. Being yourself, being effective. The other thing I think is effective counseling. Too often, everybody needs a mentor. I always say at least 2 or 3. But the other thing you got to do is sit down and talk to the people that you're working with. You can't just talk to them every time you're upset about something, give them some bad paper. Talk to them and coach and teach them, because my responsibility as the leader, I've said it already, we've said it already, is how do I make you successful in the United States Army? And I was really fortunate. All the time through my military career, I had people that cared about old Jack Tilley, about helping him, go farther and farther. I took a 2-year break in the Army, almost 2.5-year break. And I said, the Army's not for me. I'm going to get out. I want to go do something else. Once I got in that civilian sector, I realized something real quick. I didn't have the same kind of commitment, the dedication, the enthusiasm with all those people around me. So I waited about 2 years, told my wife, I said, I got to go back in, and stayed another 30 plus years. So yeah, the Army's a good place. So if you're in the Army, don't quit, stay with it as long as you can, because it's a great life.
I agree 100% with you. And you said a good piece on there about engaged leadership and being down there and getting their hands dirty. And I have a great example myself. So I was told in the morning, hey, Private Carns, hey, go down and do a PMCS on your Bradley. I said, Roger that, Sergeant, right? So I go down the motor pool. I'm down here, I have the TM out. I'm going through the right. Nobody else, like literally, no one else is in the motor pool, right? And then Sergeant Gonzalez, he had a meeting. He was my gunner. He was the team leader. He came down, he said, hey, what you doing? I said, I'm doing PMCS. He said, hey, tell me what you're doing. So, you know, I kind of walked him through some of the stuff I was doing in the TM, and then he went and got in the gunner slot. So, again, nobody else in the motor pool. Here comes Sergeant Major, right? He comes down, and he goes, who's that? And I was like, looked around, I see him, Sergeant Major. I was like, Private Carns, Sergeant Major, right? And he was like, what are you doing down here? He goes, where is everybody else? I said, I don't know, Sergeant Major, right? And Sergeant Gonzalez comes around. He goes, hey, we're down here doing PM, Sergeant Major. And he was like, hey, where's everyone else at? And I was like, I don't know. I was told to come down to PMCS by my good sergeant. So guess what I'm doing? I'm down here PMCS with my good sergeant. He goes, that is awesome. You keep up doing what you're doing. And he left. And then all of a sudden, it was funny, SMA. A lot of people come down the motor pool and did PMCS on their vehicles. But that was engaged leadership. I did what I was told, what the good sergeant told me to do, and the good sergeant come down and inspected what he expected and asked me questions on what I was doing, because it was also developing me. You know, I just wasn't reading out the TM. Hey, what are you doing? Explain it to me. Just so you're not reading it, but you understand it up here to be able to do it. Say if you don't have the TM, boom, you're able to do it because you know you have it and you've studied it and understand it.
Yeah, no, I had again, every time you say something, you make me think of something else. I had first time I had my own tank. In fact, I was at Fort Lewis, you know, and I think it was 332 at the time. And they gave me my own tank, and I went down. And the guys had, you know, wasn't the best crew in the world. But two of them, well, one of them was real good. The other two was sort of flighty. And so I said, okay, we're going to do PMCS. And I turn around, and they'd all be gone. And I said, wait a minute. So I'd go find them, bring them back and stuff. I said, we got to do this. And I turned around, they'd all be gone. So finally, they made me so mad, I put a sign-out sheet on the front slope of the tank. And if they was gone for more than 5 minutes, I'd be dragging them back there. Oh, man, I was stepped in. So they finally figured it out that I wasn't playing with them. So I had that sign-out sheet. So it helped me a lot.
Oh, yeah, I could totally imagine. You know, and, you know, there's one thing, too, that, you know, talk about in the Army that doesn't get talked about a lot, you know, is it's okay to have fun, right? When I was teaching the Command Sergeant Major Development Program, and I would tell the Sergeant Major, because it was up on, you know, I'd go through a little brief with them in the morning, and the last thing I would talk about was, hey, it's okay to have fun. And you would be amazed the shocking looks I got from everybody. I'm like, it's okay to have fun, right? Yeah, it's okay to enjoy, because if you're having fun, you're enjoying what you're doing. And guess what? That becomes passion, right? Now I'm passionate. Now I'm getting commitment, not compliance. I'm getting committed to where, hey, I want to come to work every day because I have the SMA Jack Tilley as my leader, right? And I'm passionate about what I do, and I'm having fun at what I do. And guess what? We talk about, you know, retaining talent. That's how you're going to retain talent, by doing that.
Yeah, you know, I went to Leavenworth one time. I don't use down to there, but I talked to a group of people, and they was all stone-faced. And finally, I asked the guy next to me, I think he was on a panel. I said, are we sure we're talking about the right stuff? These guys don't look like they're very happy. But I agree. I think I've laughed a lot in my life, and I've tried to laugh and loosen up and be myself. But it's okay to laugh. One of the things, though, I realized that when I was probably a young guy, that a battalion sergeant major, is you have to be careful about what you say. Even though I'm joking and laughing and stuff, sometimes people don't know that you're laughing or joking, and it's really a thin line right there. So I laugh and joke, but I think eventually I'll only laugh and joke probably around a certain group of people. The rest of them I'd probably be stone-faced or something. But I've always wanted to enjoy life. That's for doggone sure. The other thing I want to make sure we touch on is everybody should have a resume. I always think that's really important. I didn't have, when I was getting out of the military, I didn't have a resume, so I had to put one together. But I think for the people that are listening, no matter what rank you are, make your resume right now and sort of continue to develop on that resume. So when you get ready to the process out of the service, and no matter when it is, that you have something, you have the foundation of one. The other thing is networking. I think networking is so critical to everybody, not just in the Army, but after you get out of the military. So do that networking process way before you get out of the service. If in fact, you know, you may be 4 or 5 years away from getting out of the service. I don't know, but But networking is really the key, I think, to a lot of people.
No, I think networking is, even when you're a soldier, continue on networking is very important, right? Because, I tell leaders is, when I was a platoon sergeant and when I was a first sergeant, really started when I was a platoon sergeant. I mean, when I was at Fort Carson, Colorado, I knew everybody on Fort Carson, Colorado. And it wasn't necessarily the networking piece of it. It was building the relationship. Now, obviously, it's a network, right? But it was building the relationship with everybody, understanding what they do, and then, hey, once, I need some help, I'm able to go to them because I built the relationship, right? And then, or, hey, I needed something, need help, and maybe they didn't do it, but they could point me in the right direction to where I need to go because I built that relationship. And it's just not building the relationship. I tell everyone, hey, make sure you maintain that relationship. So it's just not going to see somebody one time. Hey, I'm also, planning time management to go see them and continue to maintain that relationship with them. Because that network can help you through a lot of stuff. All you have to do is raise your right hand saying, I need some help. And guaranteed, they're there for you. There's a lot of people out there that's there for you. You just have to raise your right hand and say, hey, I need some help.
Yeah, but that networking doesn't stop when you get out of the Army. I do business every day with people. I still get calls from people I haven't seen 20 years or 25 years. And it's like I talked to them yesterday. So that networking, if they know you and trust you, they'll reach out to you, whether or not it's through email or call you or social media or whatever. That'll help you in the business world if you ever get out of the service. That's really important because, there's a lot of truth to treat people with dignity and respect. Treat everybody the same. Nobody's different than anybody else. Because those relationships that you make in the military are not just for the 10, 20, 30 years that you're in the service, it's for life. Whether or not it's an officer or a non-commissioned officer, it's for life that you'll have that relationship.
Oh, man. Again, going back to soldier for life, right? Soldier for life.
Absolutely.
I agree 100% with you. Hey, again, SMA, thank you very much for coming on Connect First. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And you have one last thing. I was going to open it up for your last comments.
Your boss, when I talked the other day, I want to tell you this story. And I'll tell you the story at the very end because I'll probably cry. And I tell soldiers all the time that don't be ashamed to cry. I've cried a lot in my life, and I've cried, and I've said a lot of prayers in my life. But I'm going to tell you a story about believing. I believe in life. I believe in God. I believe in the people around me that I'm with each and every day. But I had an older son that got at 15 months old had I don't know if you heard the story before. Had pneumococcus meningitis.
I have not heard that.
Yeah, he was when he was 15 months old. He got pneumococcus meningitis. I was stationed down at Fort Polk, Louisiana, and so they shipped him down to San Antonio, and when he got there, he really was a vegetable. Couldn't see, couldn't hear. I didn't know how he was going to, live. And so after about 6 months, we was able to take him back home. I was reassigned again to Fort Lewis, Washington. And I got to Fort Lewis, and my wife, took care of him. Everything's going. He's starting to move around, doing all this stuff. And I asked the doctor one day, I said, how long is he going to live? He said, we don't know. I said, well, what's going to go on? He said, we don't know. So anyway, I just went back to normal. I started doing my job in the Army and doing what I was supposed to be doing. And my wife took care of those things. That's what spouses do. They take care of the families, and they really keep the family moving. And I remember I went to Fort Lewis, Washington, and my wife called me, and she said, Jackie, you got to come home. I said, what's that? Now, at the time, Brian was having, my wife always gets mad at me for saying, she's 10 to 15 seizures a day. And is on several kinds of medication, maybe 3 to 4 kinds of medication to try to control those seizures. But it wasn't working. And he'd still have those seizures. And at the time, it was just he'd stop, just start going again, not no grandma seizure or anything like that. So anyway, they called me up at Fort Lewis, says, Jack, you gotta come home. Brian's sick again. So of course, as the first sergeant, I went home. When I got home, I went right to Madigan Hospital. And I went in and seen the doctor, and I said to the doctor, I said, what's his prognosis? He said, we don't know. Again, at the time, he's on this medication, having these seizures, and we don't know what's going to happen to him. Think about that as a parent. It's about life. It's about God. It's about our country. And so I went into the chapel, and I got down on my hands and knees, and I said a prayer. I said, God, either let him live or let him die. Now think about that for a second. That's my son. That's my family. It's not fair. And I said, let him live, let him die. The next day, there wasn't nothing wrong with him.
Oh, man.
The seizures had stopped. And that's why it's so important to believe in life, to believe in our country, and to believe in each other.
Nope, agree 100% with you. And thank you for opening up about that, SMA. Because, again, as you say, that is how, it's just not the emotional piece of it, but we've got to open up and talk to people, right? It's very important to be able to do that. I mean, I just, talked to R2 the other day, Radio and Resiliency, and some of their counselors about some of the challenges that I was having, and they helped me out through some of the challenges. Very important to open up, get that stuff off your shoulders, to
Absolutely.
get you just not becoming a better person, but then also, it helps you become a better leader at the same time. So again, I appreciate you coming on Connect First, the 4th episode. Thank you very much for coming on here, and then now open up for any last remarks you want to make before, we go off there.
Well, I would just say thanks a lot for what you're doing, and thanks a lot for what you continue to do for our great Army. It's a wonderful Army, and I'm going to do all I can till the day I die to do everything I can to help our Army be better and better each day. So just thanks a lot for just letting me have you on the show.
Of course. Thank you very much, SMA. Have a good day. And if I don't talk to you, also,
Hey, thanks for tuning in to Connect First podcast, where we discuss leadership at its core. You can find Connect First on all your major podcast streaming platforms. Follow First Corps on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for information on upcoming episodes, as well as all things First Corps. Rate, review, and subscribe to us on YouTube, and click that notification bell so you'll know exactly when we drop a new episode. Till next time.